David Des Roches is an associate professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Security Studies at National Defense University, and he joins us now live from Washington. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the program today. Now, our reporter from Kiev says it has been relatively quiet in and around the capital since the peace talks in Istanbul last week. Do you think Russia is taking steps towards peace, or they've just changed their strategy and are regrouping?
Yeah, the latter. They were defeated around Kiev, so they withdrew because they had to. They did withdraw in relatively good order, although there are reports of individual soldiers being left behind and pockets of soldiers. Excuse me. There was a bit of destruction, but by and large, what you've seen is a forced retreat. And it appears as though, on my Twitter feed, open source people are noting specific military vehicles being rail loaded from Belarus towards the east. So it looks as though they're going to try and shift these forces that have been defeated around Kiev into the south of Ukraine to carry on the fight there.
Following those peace talks in Istanbul, both sides described the outcome as a step in the right direction. And Ukraine has outlined what it wants in terms of neutrality, but of course with security guarantees. How do you think Russia is going to respond to that draft that they sent over?
It's hard to say. I think that Russia, still has a preponderance of forces. The Russian military has performed far worse than anybody expected, far worse than I expected. But they still have a lot of soldiers, and they still think that they can win on the ground. So I think they'll reject anything other than their core demands. If they do modify it, I think what they'll insist upon is a demilitarized, not just neutral, but demilitarized Ukraine, which basically means a Ukraine that is at their mercy. And I think they will insist upon a formal recognition of Russian sovereignty over the entire provinces of Luhansk and Donetsk, which the Russians have not conquered, as well as Crimea. I don't see how Ukraine can meet those criteria.
Right. Redefining borders is also another major issue, as you mentioned. Russia wants the Donbass and Crimea, whereas Ukraine doesn't want to give up land. Do you think that this will be the make it or break it for Russia in continuing the war in Ukraine?
Well, look, your report showed clear evidence of war crimes committed by the Russian forces. It's very hard to imagine how a democratically elected leader, which is what Zelensky is, will be able to entreat with the Russians and make concessions to them under those circumstances, unless Ukraine is facing devastating defeat. Right now, they're not looking at that. But I think Russia's war aims are Donetsk, Crimea, recognition of that, and probably the entire coast of the Sea of Azov, and maybe even the entire Black Sea coast. Russia hasn't conquered all of that yet. And so sadly, I fear that there's a lot of fighting to go on before both sides reach that point of strategic exhaustion where negotiations become in earnest.
All right, David Des Roches, thank you so much for joining us here on Tier 2 World and sharing that information with us.